So I want to start off with the beginning, your childhood.
I was born in Cuba. I guess we came to the United States when I was 2 years old. My father, who was not political and not involved in the government, actually was in the watch business in Cuba, was arrested about a year after the revolution. He was held overnight and questioned and then was ultimately released the next day. And a friend of his who was high up in the government came to see him and said, you have to decide, Jerry, if you're with us or against us. And if you're not with us, I'll take you and the kids to the airport.
So how old were you when this happened?
2 years old.
Wow. So, but it was a choice of either you join us or you leave, or you join us or you get imprisoned?
No, you join us, you leave. And it was a choice that, because my father's friend was high up in the government, that I guess he was able to offer my father. I mean, it's always scary times. It was a lot of people being arrested, a lot of people being, held in prison, and some being killed. So,
right. Do you remember it at all?
Not at all, no. We came to Miami and lived in Miami for 9 months. My dad did various jobs, then ultimately decided after the Bay of Pigs that they weren't going back to Cuba. And
right.
That's when we came to New York.
You mentioned that your father did a few different jobs.
Yes, I'll tell you, the few different jobs were so my parents were actually both vegetarians, and first job my father got in the United States was working in a butcher. And he did that for a while. And my parents, my mom spoke some English, my dad spoke no English. And then ultimately him and his cousin started driving cars for people who wanted to take their cars up north. They'd come down for the winter, they'd want to bring their car back up to New York for the summer. So he would drive cars back up to New York and then sometimes back to Florida.
So how long was this sort of interim?
So this was all happened for about 9 months.
Right.
And then my parents realized they weren't going back to Cuba because the revolution was going to hold. And they decided to move up to New York.
So that must be an interesting thing. I know that, for example, my Polish side of the family, there was always that thing of they escaped from Poland, but there was always that sort of thing in the back of mind, like, are we going back? Are we not? So you're not really settling, you're not making roots.
Yeah, so I think that's what they were, in limbo probably for 9 months, a year, and then ultimately figured out they weren't going back and that they had to make a life in the United States. And, I always look back at it and I admire it so much because my dad was 29, my mom was 27, and you kind of with 2 kids and no money and kind of, and not speaking the language, and realize that, you have to make a go of it.
Yeah.
And you don't have a choice.
Yeah. By all accounts, it sounds like he had such a sort of a drive, but also being able to see outside the box in certain respects.
Yeah. So when he came to the United States, there wasn't really a luxury watch market in the United States. And so him and his partner were able to get the distribution for Piaget in the United States, and which was an unknown brand and virtually no business here. He had this vision that Americans would buy expensive watches if they were promoted to them, if they were advertised to them.
But at the time, why were watches not a piece? Because I've read that at the time in Europe, they were a piece at that time. So what was it about the Americans that didn't?
I think Americans were much more utilitarian. So much really about, a watch was something that just told time, and, you could wear any watch that could tell time.
But that wasn't the case in every aspect of like the cars, for example, were still a status symbol, right?
Yes. And so I think he had this vision that people would always be interested in status, and that you could make watches a status symbol. He did that, really worked really hard during the 60s to do that, and really through advertising.
Right. Well, so I'm going to stop you here because I want to break it down so everybody understands the story, because it's a fascinating story. First of all, it was a suitcase full of watches when he moved to New York, right?
Well, not when he moved to New York, but that's how they started the business. He would travel the country selling watches to high-end jewelers.
Right.
And trying to have them build a business in watches. They all carried high-end jewelry.
But these individual watches were around the 1,000 mark?
They started at about $1,000, and they went up to like $4,000, which was,
so
if you adjust
expensive.
That for inflation, that was really expensive.
That's a hefty watch.
Yes. So he actually worked with an advertising agency at that time to come up with the tagline, the world's most expensive watch.
Right.
And that really got them launched. And then with ads in fashion magazines like The New Yorker, like Vogue, like Harper's Bazaar, was able to really see the results and build a business.
I think it's an amazing work ethic, and I think being able to witness that as a child it can be huge in terms of how you grow up.
Yeah, I think none of us, we didn't grow up with a lot of things, but we grew up with the values that you do what you need to do. So, and I learned that when my dad was willing to drive cars, okay,
Right.
and willing to work in a butcher.
So when you were growing up, did you all the time think, I'm going to follow my father into this business, or?
Never thought about it in my life. It was the last thing. I never really thought I was going to come into this business. I went to college thinking I was going to be a lawyer. After 4 years of school, realized that I didn't want to spend my career reading and writing, and that if I chose to work with, I was given the opportunity to work with them, and if I chose to do that, one, I'd have to start at the bottom, which I did,
Right.
but two, that I'd get to sell and work on beautiful products. And
Right.
So Movado, which is now the namesake of our company, is a brand that has always kind of had a relationship with beautiful design and arts, and really emanating from its most innovative product, and the one that it's best known for is the museum watch that was designed by an American industrial product designer, Nathan George Horowitz. So he actually designed 1947, took all the numbers off of a watch and just designed a watch with a clean blank dial and put a dot at 12 o'clock. And that was revolutionary
Right,
at that time.
it was
People
like,
say, how are you going to tell time?
Right.
Well, you could easily tell time because the time is relative.
Yeah.
But people weren't used to that. And so it was really fairly controversial. We actually designed it in 1947 and tried, nobody would make it. So it was in 1960 that Movado, and it was before we owned Movado, but that Movado decided to try to make it.
So I never knew that it was never. I thought he designed it, it was made, but it wouldn't take off. You're saying
No,
it was never actually made.
it was made in 1960.
So when it was finally made in the 60s, was it an instant success, or was
I think it had a quick following, but it wasn't, ultimately hugely successful. And part of it was because it didn't become as well known as it should have if it had been marketed properly and advertised properly. And that's what we did when we bought it. And still today, it's our single best-selling design. It looks as modern today or as revolutionary today as it did over 50 years ago. We felt that it was a piece of art, and so that we should continue to celebrate that heritage by working on watches that celebrate art and with artists. So the first artist watch that we ever made, which was I think in 1987 or so, was the Andy Warhol watch.
Can you name a couple of the artists?
Sure. So obviously Andy was the first, but we've worked with Yaakov Agam, we've worked with James Rosenquist, with Max Beal, Romeo Brito. So really fantastic artists, and we're going to get to work on a collaboration with Alexei.
Which I'm very proud. I mean, it's a huge honor to be in that list of people. So obviously, let's talk quickly about our collaboration. Why now?
We actually saw just that we had followed your work and thought that we could do something with photography, and then in getting involved with you and in talking about it, really saw the opportunity is a bigger opportunity than just that, and one that could focus on the environment and the world that we live in, and things that are highly relevant today to me, but I hope are highly relevant to consumers and to younger generation too, because we have to worry about the world that we all live in and we leave each other.
Yeah. So when you think of your father, what do you remember most about him?
I remember him as a person who was highly creative and a great, really, leader.
So in that case, so I was taking it from that generation to the next generation down, because obviously your daughter is now working with you. So it's 3 generations in the same business. What do you think that you're teaching your daughter?
Hopefully she's looking at my example, and that I still work hard, and that I'm driven, and that I worry about our people. Most leaders of successful businesses in this country and around the world care about the families that make a living from their business. And you're not able to just keep people by paying them. You have to keep people engaged and motivated because you care about them and you care about their families. So we have to be good leaders and good people.
When I hear you talking about how you treat your employees, I feel like there may be some connection to your history. Do you feel like there's something in your history that determines how you treat people who work for you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it comes from believing this is a great country and that it was the country that gave my family the opportunity to be successful in a country where we came as immigrants, not speaking the language. So I really believe that immigrants are what built this country and how important immigration is for this country. And I hope we're just going through a cyclical phase right now where that's difficult, but that we'll continue to understand that for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.